March 17th, 1943. Tierpitzufer, 76-78, Berlin. The folder slammed onto the mahogany desk with such force that coffee splashed from Admiral Wilhelm Canaris's porcelain cup, staining intelligence reports that would have meant execution if discovered by the Gestapo, hunting for defeatists within military intelligence. Impossible, Canaris muttered. His one good hand, the other, had been wounded in Chile decades earlier, trembling as he lifted the document closer to his aging eyes. The Americans are feeding us propaganda through turned agents. They must be. Through the tall windows of Abwehr headquarters, overlooking the Landwehr Canal, where Rosa Luxemburg's body had been dumped 24 years earlier, Canaris could see workers clearing rubble from the previous night's RAF bombing raid. Now, as chief of German military intelligence in the third year of total war, he held in his trembling hands a report that challenged not just Nazi propaganda, but the entire mathematical foundation upon which German leaders had bet their nation's survival. According to intercepted communications and reports from agents still operating in Mexico City, the Ford Motor Company's Willow Run plant near Detroit was producing one 4-engine B-24 Liberator bomber every single hour, a claim so outrageous it bordered on enemy psychological warfare. The B-24 Liberator, 1.5 million individual parts, 450,000 rivets holding the airframe together, 30,000 separate components assembled into an 18-ton aircraft capable of carrying 8,000 pounds of bombs across the Atlantic, rolling off an assembly line faster than Germany could produce a simple Kübelwagen military vehicle. Major Friedrich Wilhelm Heinz, standing rigidly at attention before Canaris's desk, had triple-checked the intelligence through separate channels. The numbers, impossible as they seemed, remained mathematically consistent across all sources. What neither man could possibly know was that this moment would trigger the most devastating intelligence failure in modern warfare. The systematic inability of German intelligence to comprehend, believe, or effectively communicate the true scale of American industrial capacity to Nazi leadership, dooming the Third Reich through a fatal miscalculation of mathematical inevitability. The collapse of German intelligence regarding American production capacity had begun 2 years earlier. In the heady days when Nazi victory seemed inevitable and American entry into the war appeared unlikely. In late 1941, Luftwaffe General Karl Köhler had presented Hermann Göring with detailed reports from military attaché General Friedrich von Boetischer in Washington, stating with documentary evidence that American aircraft production was approaching 2,000 planes per month, numbers that exceeded all German production. Göring had laughed, literally laughed, with the belly-shaking mirth of a man certain of his superiority, declaring that Americans could only build refrigerators and razor blades, not military aircraft requiring precision and dedication. The Americans are bluffing, Göring had told Hitler at the Wolfschanze on December 11, 1941, just 4 days after Pearl Harbor brought America into the war. Their democracy makes them weak, incapable of the discipline war requires. Their mongrel population makes them inefficient. Their Jews make them corrupt. They cannot possibly produce what they claim. Hitler, preparing Operation Barbarossa's final winter offensive toward Moscow, had barely listened. His attention focused eastward, where he believed Germany's destiny lay, not westward, where an industrial colossus was awakening. By March 1943, German intelligence networks scattered across the Americas were reporting something that defied every assumption of Nazi racial theory and economic understanding that had guided German planning since 1933. The reports came from different independent sources with no coordination between them. Mexican industrialists, sympathetic to Germany, Spanish diplomats maintaining neutrality while cultivating both sides, Swedish businessmen traveling through Detroit on legitimate commercial business, even intercepted letters from American workers to relatives in neutral countries. They all said the same impossible thing with mathematical consistency. Ford's Willow Run plant alone was producing more heavy bombers than all of Germany's aircraft factories combined. Oberstleutnant Nikolaus Ritter, head of Abwehr's Air Intelligence Section Abteilung I divided by Luft, had spent 3 weeks in March 1943 analyzing data from every available source, cross-referencing reports, searching for the deception he was certain must exist. A former Lufthansa pilot who had lived in America for 10 years before the war, Ritter understood American industrial capacity better than most German officers, whose knowledge of America came from Hollywood films and Nazi propaganda. His apartment in Manhattan during the 1922 had overlooked the construction of the Chrysler Building. He had watched Americans erect the world's tallest building in less than 2 years through systematic application of mass production techniques to construction itself. Herr Admiral, Ritter reported to Canaris with the exhausted precision of a man who had discovered uncomfortable truth. If these numbers are even half accurate, and I believe they are entirely accurate, then Germany has already lost the war. It is now only a question of mathematics and time. The intelligence came through circuitous routes, each more dangerous and complicated than the last, requiring verification through multiple independent channels before Canaris would trust it enough to present to leadership. Georg Nikolaus, running the Abwehr's primary intelligence network in Mexico City from behind the facade of an import-export business, had cultivated sources among American businessmen who traveled freely between Detroit's industrial heartland and Mexico's oil fields, men who spoke casually of miracles they'd witnessed without understanding their strategic significance. On February 3, 1943, American oil executive Harold Morrison had attended a reception at the German-Mexican Commerce Association in Mexico City, a nominally neutral venue where business and intelligence intersected. After several tequilas loosening his tongue, Morrison began describing his recent tour of the Willow Run facility, arranged by Ford to showcase to potential investors the company's capability to fulfill massive government contracts. "Gentlemen," Morrison had said enthusiastically, unaware that Wolfgang Blau, a German agent posing as an Argentine leather merchant, was memorizing every word with trained precision. "What I saw at Willow Run defies description. The assembly line is over a mile long. The building is so vast that clouds sometimes form inside it, and it actually rains within the factory on humid days." Morrison had pulled out a pencil and began sketching on a napkin with the unconscious precision of an engineer. "They have 42,000 workers, including thousands of women, Negro women, building the most complex machine ever created by human hands." Blau had asked carefully, trying to sound casually interested rather than desperately focused. "But surely such complexity means frequent breakdowns, production delays, quality problems?" Morrison had laughed. That's what Consolidated Aircraft thought when Ford proposed this. They mocked Ford, said you can't build planes like cars. But Ford broke the bomber down into 60,000 separate operations. Each worker performs the same task repeatedly, achieving perfection through repetition. A woman who yesterday was making breakfast for her children now installs hydraulic lines in the tail section. They train them in days, not months. Perhaps the most detailed intelligence came through Francisco Franco's Spain, maintaining precarious neutrality, while secretly providing information to Germany in exchange for tungsten, shipments crucial to Spanish industrial survival. Colonel José Ungría, Spanish military attaché in Washington, maintained close relationships with American aircraft manufacturers while secretly providing detailed technical intelligence to Germany through diplomatic pouches that couldn't be inspected. In March 1943, Ungría attended a reception at the Argentine embassy where he met Charles Sorensen, Ford's legendary production chief and the architect of Willow Run, the man who had revolutionized automobile manufacturing and now applied those principles to bombers. Sorensen, believing he was speaking to a representative of a neutral nation that might purchase aircraft after the war ended, spoke freely about the plant's revolutionary capabilities with the pride of an engineer describing his masterwork. "Colonel," Sorensen had said, unaware that every word would be in Berlin within 2 weeks via Spanish diplomatic channels, "when I first visited Consolidated San Diego plant in 1940, they were building B-24 seconds outdoors in the California sunshine, each one slightly different from the last, taking 180,000 man-hours per aircraft. I knew we could do infinitely better." Ungría had pressed for details. claiming professional interest as a military engineer trained at Spain's academy. Sorensen, proud of his achievement and eager to explain, obliged enthusiastically. I spent one night in my hotel room in San Diego, sketching out the entire production flow on hotel stationery. We would build bombers exactly like we build cars, not by having workers swarm over a stationary aircraft like ants, but by moving the aircraft past stationary workstations. Each worker would perform specific tasks repeatedly, achieving perfection through repetition rather than through years of training. The Spaniard had asked about workforce challenges of such unprecedented complexity. Sorensen's answer would have shocked Nazi leadership if they'd believed it. We built an apprentice school that trains 8,000 workers weekly, more than Germany trains in a month. Women comprise 40% of our workforce now. They're actually better at detailed assembly work, smaller hands for tight spaces, more patience for repetitive tasks requiring precision. We have Negro workers operating the most sophisticated machinery. We have boys of 16 managing supply logistics. Democracy means utilizing all available human resources without artificial limitations. Through Swedish, Argentine, Japanese, and Turkish diplomatic channels, German intelligence received consistent reports from sources with no contact with each other, all confirming Willow Run's impossible production rate. Swedish engineer Erik Lundberg, visiting the plant in March 1943 on legitimate business for SKF Ball Bearing Company, reported with Scandinavian precision. The plant operates with efficiency that defies European understanding of industrial organization. They use 1,600 specialized machine tools, many designed for single operations. The capital investment is staggering, perhaps $200 million for tooling alone, more than Sweden's entire industrial capacity. Japanese commander Toshikazu Omai's coded message to Tokyo, intercepted and decrypted by German intelligence, provided completely independent verification. Ford Willow Run single factory produces more aircraft monthly than entire Japanese aviation industry combined. American industrial capacity exceeds all previous intelligence estimates by factor of 10. By April 1943, German intelligence had assembled comprehensive data from 17 completely independent sources across 4 continents, all confirming the same impossible production rate with mathematical consistency that couldn't be coincidental. The numbers were staggering and grew more alarming with each report. Willow Run alone was producing 650 B-24 seconds monthly at peak capacity, with entire American B-24 production across 5 plants exceeding 1,400 monthly more 4-engine bombers in 1 month than Germany had built in all of 1942. Desperate for ground truth that would either confirm or refute these impossible reports, Canaris authorized Operation Pastorius, the insertion of saboteurs into the United States via submarine with secret orders to gather intelligence before conducting any sabotage operations. George John Dash, leader of one of the 2 4-man teams, had lived in America for 20 years before returning to Germany in 1939. His secret orders from Canaris himself were clear: gather photographic evidence and documentary proof of aircraft production before attempting any sabotage that might compromise intelligence gathering. In the early morning hours of June 13, 1942, Dash's team landed at Amagansett, Long Island, having come ashore from U-202 through heavy surf just after midnight. Within days, tormented by the implications of his mission and what he already knew about American capacity from his years living there, Dash made a fateful decision. He surrendered to the FBI, walking into their Washington headquarters and demanding to speak with J. Edgar Hoover himself. During his interrogation, Dash revealed something that stunned even his American captors, who thought they understood German intelligence priorities. FBI Special Agent Charles Lanman recorded Dash's statement with growing disbelief. Canaris himself told me personally that Berlin doesn't believe your production figures. They think Willow Run is propaganda, that the photographs are faked, that the numbers are impossible. He wanted photographs, employee counts, shipping records, proof that would force Goering to accept reality before it's too late. Agent Lanman had asked incredulously, struggling to comprehend German disbelief. They don't believe we're producing a bomber every hour? We've published the figures in newspapers. Dash had laughed bitterly, the laugh of a man watching two nations he'd loved destroy each other through mutual misunderstanding. Agent Landman, I lived in Detroit for 15 years. I've seen your automobile factories. I tried to tell them that if Ford could produce a car every minute before the war, they could certainly produce a bomber every hour during it with the same systematic methods. They accused me of being defeatist, of being corrupted by American democracy. On April 20th, 1943, Hitler's 54th birthday, celebrated with diminishing enthusiasm as the war turned against Germany. Canaris personally presented the accumulated intelligence to Goering at Karin Hall, the Reichsmarshal's ostentatious hunting estate north of Berlin. The meeting would become legendary among surviving German intelligence officers for Goering's complete, willful rejection of mathematical reality in favor of ideological comfort. Canaris had brought photographs, intercepted documents, reports from 17 independent sources, statistical analyses. He spread them across Goering's massive oak table like a dealer showing cards that would lose the game, knowing his audience wouldn't believe the hand dealt by fate. Herr Reichsmarschall. Canaris began carefully, choosing words that might penetrate ideological armor. We have confirmation from 17 independent sources with no contact between them. The Ford Willow Run plant is producing one B-24 Liberator every hour at peak production. They achieved this rate consistently since January. Goering, weighing over 280 pounds by this point in the war and increasingly dependent on morphine for chronic pain, picked up one of the photographs showing the assembly line stretching into the distance like an industrial cathedral. Canaris, Goering said with the contempt of a man whose worldview couldn't accommodate inconvenient facts. Do you take me for a fool? These are obviously wooden mock-ups, props for propaganda photographs. The Americans want us to believe they can build aircraft like sausages to demoralize us. This Willow Run plant probably produces 50 bombers monthly at most, impressive for Americans, but hardly threatening. Canaris pulled out another document, an intercepted manifest from the Pennsylvania Railroad showing aluminum shipments with tonnage figures verified through multiple sources. Herr Reichsmarschall, they're consuming 16 million pounds of aluminum monthly at this one plant alone. That's more than our entire monthly aluminum production for all purposes. Goering laughed harshly, the laugh of a man refusing to accept reality. Then where do they get this aluminum? From their Negro workers? From their women riveters? Canaris, you've been deceived by American propaganda. I expected better from you. A week later, Canaris was summoned to the Wolfschanze to brief Hitler personally. The meeting included Generals Jodl and Keitel and Propaganda Minister Joseph Goebbels, men who understood the power of belief over facts. Hitler, studying maps of the Eastern Front where the Wehrmacht was preparing for Operation Citadel at Kursk, listened impatiently as Canaris presented intelligence that contradicted everything the Führer believed about American weakness. Mein Führer, Canaris said, knowing he was risking execution for defeatism, if the Americans are producing 1,400 B-24 seconds monthly plus equal numbers of B-17 seconds plus fighter aircraft, and if British production continues, the aerial bombardment of the Reich will soon exceed our defensive capabilities regardless of how many fighters we produce. Hitler's response was characteristic, rooted in ideology rather than mathematics. Admiral, the Americans are capable of mass production of simple goods, automobiles, refrigerators, consumer trinkets. But a bomber is not a car. It requires precision engineering, skilled craftsmanship, dedication to excellence. It took us 6 years of focused national effort to prepare for war. They claim to have achieved this industrial transformation in 16 months. It's mathematically impossible. General Jodl, studying Canaris's figures with the trained eye of a Krimet, a general staff officer, made a simple calculation aloud. Even if we accept 1/4 of these figures as accurate, the figures are completely false. Hitler interrupted with the finality of a man whose certainty couldn't be shaken by evidence. Building this miraculous factory and achieving this production in such time violates basic industrial principles. I will not waste resources preparing for an impossible threat. Unknown to Nazi leadership, who dismissed reports as propaganda, Canaris had obtained actual film footage of Willow Run in operation through American intelligence contacts in Switzerland, who hoped accurate information might shorten the war. The film, smuggled via Spanish diplomatic pouches, showed 5 minutes of the assembly line in full operation, undeniable visual proof of what reports had claimed. Canaris and his deputy Hans Oster watched the film in a locked room in Abwehr headquarters, the projector whirring in darkness. The camera travelled along sections of the mile-long assembly line, showing B-24 seconds in every stage of construction moving past at steady, relentless pace. Workers, men, women, black, white, performed tasks with mechanical precision that spoke of systematic training. A clock visible in several shots confirmed the timing was accurate, not propaganda manipulation. "My God," Oster whispered in the darkness, his voice carrying the weight of doomed certainty. "It's all true. Every word of every report. They're actually doing it." Canaris lit the film with his cigarette lighter, watching it burn and curl in the ashtray. "We cannot show this to them. Hans. They would accuse us of creating fake footage in Hollywood studios or of being traitors spreading defeatist propaganda. They'll believe comfortable lies over uncomfortable truth." In November 1943, German intelligence obtained aerial photographs of Willow Run taken by a Spanish diplomat flying in a civilian aircraft over Detroit. Photo analysts spent weeks studying the images with magnifying glasses, measuring, calculating, verifying. Their conclusions, presented in a 47-page technical report. Parking lots contained approximately 12,000 cars, indicating 3-shift operations. 47 completed B-24 seconds, visible at adjacent airfield, ready for delivery. Assembly line visible through skylights. Aircraft spaced exactly as human intelligence reported. Rail sidings showed dozens of freight cars delivering materials continuously. Building footprint matched reported 3.5 million square feet, Hauptmann Werner wrote in his analysis. Photographic evidence confirms all human intelligence reports. Production rate appears accurate. Recommend immediate strategic reassessment and peace negotiations before American bomber production renders Reich defenseless. Goering, shown the photographs by Canaris in one final desperate attempt, dismissed them as clever American photographic manipulation using scale models, probably photographed in a Hollywood studio lot. Dr. Albert Speer, Hitler's armaments minister and the only Nazi leader with genuine understanding of modern industrial production, secretly obtained American intelligence reports through Swedish contacts. His diary entry for May 15, 1943, discovered after the war, reveals his private despair. If the Willow Run figures are even half accurate, we face not defeat but annihilation. They produce more aircraft in a month than we manage in a year. But I cannot speak this truth. To do so would be my death warrant for defeatism. By April 1944, reality could no longer be denied. Willow Run achieved its peak production rate that month, 453 airplanes in 468 working hours. One finished B-24 Liberator every 63 minutes, exactly as German intelligence had reported a year earlier. The plant employed 42,331 workers, 11,000 women, 26% of workforce, 3,800 African Americans, 9% of workforce, 1,200 disabled workers, 3% of workforce. This demographic to the tenure races passer breakdown shattered Nazi racial ideology completely. The inferior races and weaker sex were outproducing the German master race by orders of magnitude. On June 6, 1944, over 11,000 Allied aircraft appeared over France for D-Day. The Luftwaffe could muster fewer than 300 fighters in response. Feldmarschall Hugo Sperle sent a desperate message. The enemy's aerial superiority is absolute. Our intelligence was correct all along. We deceived ourselves. The German intelligence officers who tried to report truth paid with their lives. Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, executed April 9th, 1945 at Flossenburg. Hans Oster, executed April 9th, 1945 at Flossenburg. Alexis von Rouen, executed October 1944. The final numbers proved German intelligence had been accurate. Willow Run produced 8,685 B-24 seconds, 1,942 to 1,945. Total American aircraft, 324,000 versus Germany's 119,000. Peak monthly production, 9,000 American aircraft versus 3,500 German Albert Speer. In post-war interrogation, explained why Germany refused to believe. To accept that Ford could produce a bomber every hour was to accept that our entire worldview was wrong, that democracy wasn't weak but strong, that racial mixing didn't create weakness but strength, and that women could do men's work. It meant accepting we had started a war we could never win. At the 1985 dedication of the Yankee Air Museum at Willow Run, former Rosie the Riveter, Rose Will Monroe, met former Luftwaffe pilot Hans Ulrich Rudel, Germany's most decorated pilot. Rudel asked with genuine curiosity born of decades of wondering, "How did you build so many so fast?" Monroe answered with the simple truth that had eluded German intelligence acceptance. "Honey, we just went to work every day and did our job. Nothing fancy, nothing magical. Just punch in, build bombers, punch out. Democracy isn't complicated, it's just free people doing their best." Rudel responded quietly. "We were told democracy made you weak, that your diversity made you inefficient. We were told lies, and those lies killed millions." In the ruins of Berlin, May 1945, American intelligence officers discovered a final German intelligence report on Willow Run, dated April 20th, 1945, Hitler's last birthday. Willow Run production confirmed at all reported levels. "We reported this truth 2 years ago. We were not believed. Germany dies not from lack of intelligence, but from lack of wisdom to believe intelligence contradicting ideology. Let future generations learn. Reality does not bend to ideology. Mathematics does not yield to mythology. Truth ignored becomes tragedy." The report was never delivered. Hitler was in his bunker. The 1,000-year Reich had days to live, and thousands of American bombers, many built at Willow Run, delivered the final argument German intelligence had tried to make 2 years earlier. The verdict of history is clear. German intelligence was excellent. German intelligence acceptance was catastrophic. In that failure to believe uncomfortable truths lies a warning for all nations in all times. Reality doesn't care what you believe. Those who deny reality in favor of ideology will ultimately be destroyed by it. Willow Run built more than bombers. It built proof that democracy works, that diversity strengthens, that freedom produces. German spies counted them all. German leaders believed none, and that disbelief killed the Third Reich as surely as any bomb.